The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, I was just a kid at school, heard Public Enemy, Don't Believe the Hype, Run DMC, loved hip-hop, used to buy 12-inch vinyls, finished high school, always like the dream of being a DJ. There wasn't really much of a DJ scene in Australia then, period, for dance, techno, hip-hop. There were dudes like ASK winning DMCs and stuff, had mixtapes out. And I wanted to make my own mixtapes just to have blend tapes. Got into doing that a little bit, tried doing some clubs in the early 90s, just fresh out of school, like 93. And was not really any good at dealing with the club politics. Worked out pretty quick that you got booked at clubs if you could bring people, not if you're a good DJ. So I kind of stopped doing that. Had a day job. DJing was my hobby. Got a radio show. Got pretty popular in Sydney. We were on Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. called Flavour in Your Ear. From Craig Mac record. Put out a mixtape, started selling it. Got a job at a club called Chocolate City in 97. It was kind of like the hot new club in Sydney. Ended up coming second at the DMC in New South Wales in 98 and 99. Met Samurai in 99. He came third. I came second. A guy named DJ Stanley came first. We were all actually buddies. And Stanley and I were big DJs on the club scene at the time. He's since moved to Asia and he's like big DJ out there. Anyway, at that time, I was doing bootleg mixtapes and CDs and always wanted to take it bigger. So I had the dream of doing a proper official mix album, you know, seeing what Funkmaster Flex had done. I was talking to record labels out here. They were telling me it was too hard. I was dreaming. There was a lot of no's, a lot of doors shut. Had a deal with Jive. Didn't happen. Had a deal on the table with Sony because I wanted to do a Loud Records mixtape because they had Wu-Tang, Big Pun. Shit would have been bananas, you know. That never ended up happening. And I think at the time, as I was learning the business, you know, everyone, you know, Universal owns the rights to license almost everything. Like I'd say like 80% of all the hip hop because they distribute so many labels, Def Jam, Rockefeller. So someone at Universal kind of would have seen these requests come through and then they saw, okay, they've all got this guy, Nino Brown, attached to them. We should talk to him. Long story short, ended up doing a deal with Universal. And Nick Toth was involved in that. And he did the second disc, which was more sort of golden era style hip hop. At the time, the two scenes were a little closer. The scenes were kind of dividing then, and obviously now they're pretty divided, you know. And Nick knew the lady, her name's Jackie Spillane at Universal at the time. So that was dope, man. We did that. We set it up. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're good at business and stuff like that. But I always had an attitude that, you know, I left a day job to do this, so I wasn't going to like mess about. I was going to either do it properly or not at all because I could get paid working at Optus was like my last day job, you know. So I kind of had that late 90s F you pay me attitude, you know. Anyway, you know, we negotiated a deal as an artist because what would happen is sometimes with DJ projects, they pay you just a fee, like a mix fee. Here's $1,000 or something, go and mix this. We're like, no, we are artists. What we do with the records, cutting them back, that is an art form. You need to cut us a royalty. And so we sort of made history in Australia as being the first hip-hop DJs to be signed as artists. 2001 that happened, 2002 Blazin. They wanted to sell 20, 25,000. We did that. We had a TV budget, had TV ads. We were in the TV ads. Shit was dope. Everything was cranking. And then Nick Toth, I think at the time, was technically a citizen of Amsterdam or somewhere. You know, his parents were diplomats. That's how he ended up in Australia. And something happened with his visa. He couldn't work, like officially, you know. So at the time, we actually reached out to a couple of different DJs, and Samurai had just won the DMC. And Samurai and I were part of a crew, the Chief Rockers, so it was easy to pull Samurai in. So Samurai came into Blazin 2, which Nick had kind of got halfway there with the tracks and whatnot. He came in, he mixed it, that was it. And then record companies being record companies, and it's not even a bad thing, because Blazin 2 was a success, they were like, well, let's keep this guy now, you know, which sucked for Nick, but, you know, life takes those turns sometimes, you know what I mean? There's nothing we could do. So Samurai and myself did Blazin 2, 3, 4, and 5. Blazin 5 was a fucking smash. The scene in Australia was crazy. It was 2006. Hip-hop and R&B is like an all-time high. The Edge in Sydney had gone all urban. I was on there like 5 times a day. And Nova tried to compete, and they got Samurai. So it was great for us. He's on Nova. I'm on the Edge. They offered Sam his own deal, and I stuck with Blazin because it was my name and concept and whatnot. And Samurai went off and did his own thing. I still rocked with Blazin, and after Blazin 5, we switched the name up and made the title Blazin 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And we gave it a rest last year because shout out to my dude Nick Skits. I didn't want it to be like Nick Skits Mix 57, whatnot. So we gave the Blazin name a bit of a rest. It came out with some new shit called Downloadable Dope. Went with the whole dope thing, selling dope, digital dope, dope dealer, blah, blah, blah. Pretty cool. And it's funny though, because sometimes when people like something, they're like, hey man, we like it. Blazin, where's Blazin, where's Blazin? And Downloadable Dope went really well. But people are always like, where's Blazin, where's Blazin? So we're actually bringing back Blazin again this year. It's going to be called Blazin the R&B edition because now, R&B Fridays and all this stuff. R&B is the new trendy word right now. So we're going to do the R&B edition. And that's the short version of that. 15 years. Doesn't seem like that long, man, but time flies.
Can you remember the kind of numbers that you were moving with the Blazin Mixtapes?
Oh, man, I remember every one. I got paid off each one of them. I can tell you exactly. No, I mean, like, we did like 23,000, I think, for the first one. And, sales are relative to what you spend. If you spend no money and you sell 10 CDs and you're happy, then you're winning. You know what I mean? So there's no right or wrong answer. But for the first Blazin, they wanted like 20, 25, and we met that target, which was great because if we didn't, we would have been fucked, and out of there. We started going gold, which is 35,000 in Australia. I think in like Blazin 3, we might have gone gold. I think it was, yeah. Universal made us this dope plaque, kind of looked like a mixer and 2 turntables, and shit was fly. And so gold was 35. And then we would sort of hit those goals. We sort of hit gold. It'd be anywhere between, 35 to early 40s. And you got to remember back then, I mean, that was a hell of a lot of money they were generating, but they would spend like 100K on TV ads. So it was good. And it was great for our careers because we were on fucking TV. The Voice would be on and you'd see me and Samurai in a TV ad, Those ads used to cost like 15 grand each. It was crazy. Like you said, different marketplace, different world. And then that's when Blazin 5 went platinum, which was 70,000. So what had happened is we'd probably been dancing around that 40 to 45,000 mark, and then when the whole urban thing exploded, we cracked close to 70. And then from then, that was like a major wave, I guess, in Australia at the time. I feel like it's coming back now. And then after that, it slowed back down again to sort of gold sales, early 40s, stuff like that. And then probably, I think we might have even gone gold like up to Blazin 2009, Blazin 2010, maybe. I think, don't quote me on that, but they were still doing very well. And then obviously over time, they would adjust their marketing budget, so it was still a success and they'd still put it out. I know Blazin 12, 13, 14 did not go gold. But like I said, relative, they probably weren't spending as much. It was still a winner. They were still happy to do it. So it was cool, man. I've sold over 500,000 albums in total at this point. So I got a nice plaque for that too. My studio, when you come to Sydney, I'll show you. I got some cool joints. Actually, one thing that helped Nick and I get the original deal was we were already traveling around Australia. So a lot of kids today haven't heard there's an expression called tour support. So when you're an artist and a new artist, the label might give your project, $15,000 or something to travel around Australia to do promo shows where you may not have gotten paid to cover your expenses and whatnot, But Nick and I were already touring Australia as standalone DJs, so we already had pretty successful DJ careers. I hadn't been to Adelaide at the time. Adelaide was always a hard nut to crack, but I was going to Melbourne, Canberra, Brisbane, Perth. And so they didn't have to give us any tour support, which was pretty enticing for them at the time because it was kind of like there was no way they were going to lose. So and obviously after Blazing the TV ads and all that sort of stuff, we went even more heavy duty, And Samurai was the DMC champion, so he was doing stuff already. We were doing a lot of shows together, and obviously being a part of a crew, I was happily introducing him to people wherever I could. And then, yeah, man, we did a lot of touring. We would, the Blazin tours would be like 50 dates places, like a lot of club shows. And it sounds like a crazy amount of shows, but if there's like 7, however many states in Australia, and if, half a dozen clubs in each place, it adds up, Yeah, I did a big tour of Asia in about 2004, went out to Philippines, Indonesia. It was crazy, a lot of fun. And I've been out to England. I did a lot of stuff with DJ Pogo. And He worked with an artist called TY, and I DJed for him once in Sweden, which was pretty cool. So I've had a pretty good run, man. It's been a lot of fun.
When we're talking about how you've been touring and stuff, like in the past,
Yes.
What are some of the coolest or biggest names that you've had? You know,
The coolest name of all fucking time is Jay-Z. And I got to DJ for a group called Smash Proof from New Zealand. So I was their tour DJ. The tour was called Rock the Block. They were the warm-up act. And I was so fucking excited to meet Jay-Z, you know? Like, I'm talking groupie shit. And with those big shows, imagine it's like the radio station where everyone's got their rooms here and there's like an outdoor area. You know, once you've finished, they usually want you out. Like, go watch the show or go home, but don't stay here, you know? That way Jay-Z can walk around freely without people like me bugging him and Beyonce and whatever, you know? So every day we do these shows, and Smash Proof are like these street dudes from New Zealand. So they were kind of like young and rowdy, and I used to stand in the doorway and be kind of like, shut the hell up. Jay's coming, you know? I want to meet Jay. And I used to stand in the doorway every night, and Jay would walk past. And Green Lantern was DJing for Jay, and I'd met Green Lantern before because I opened up for his DJ tour of Australia a few years earlier when he was DJing for Eminem. So we had a relationship. And every day Joe would walk past the room and like give me a fist bump, and I used to be like fucking you know. But that was super cool, man. That shit was dope. And like on all their, instead of having like Jay-Z on his door, you know, they'd have like a Batman image one night or Superman. Like they were just cool. Everything about them was fucking cool, you know. And that was when him and Beyonce, I think, it just kind of got together, and people didn't really know what was going on. And she would be walking around backstage and super friendly and say hello to everybody. And you know, I think it was just key that we stayed low key and didn't try and talk to anybody. Do you know what I mean? Like we were just there, like we had stuff to do. But yeah, man, that's one of my best tour highlights. That was crazy.
Fuck, man, jigger.
Actually, the funny story is, I haven't told a lot of people, is I wanted drops bad from Jay-Z, as you can imagine, you know. So what I used to do is I used to talk to the guards because they were his bodyguards, you know. He had one dude. And because, you know, when you're on a tour and they see you there for 4 or 5 days or shows, whatever, by the end of it, everyone's a lot more relaxed and pretty cool. So they're kind of like, yeah, we're going to do it. He'll do them for you. We're just having some drinks. Because they'd been on the road for like 3 months. It was like a world tour, and Australia was the last part. And I waited outside the door for like 2 or 3 hours, man, and I could hear him fucking partying. And then eventually the guy comes out and goes, yeah, doesn't feel like doing them now. Oh, man, I was so upset. I had a dream about it a few days later, and I woke up and I actually thought I had them. I remember running to my room to find them and was devastated when I found I didn't have them. But yeah, that was the coolest shit. But you know, I've done a lot of cool tours, man. I've done a lot of stuff with Fat Man Scoop. I did a song with Fat Man Scoop for Blazin 2010. We did a tour together called Winter Beats, which had T-Pain and Neo on it. And I think off memory, I don't know whether T-Pain was headlining it or Neo was headlining it or whether they were together. But Fat Man Scoop would, you know, I'd DJ between all the acts. And then after Scoop had done his show, he would change and come out and just hype the mic while I DJ'd. And then because we had our song together, and I'd met Scoop just from doing shows with him in Australia before, so I've got a relationship with him. And we were fucking killing it. Do you know what I mean? And to be honest, I mean, anyone can kill it when you got Fat Man Scoop doing his part, you know, but because we knew each other, and we talk about what we're going to do, we were like ripping it every night. And then Neo would come out afterwards and perform Sexy Love, because that was the big record, but it was a very mellow record, and it wasn't the right record. What we did, having the fucking place heaving and then Sexy Love clashed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they cut that. Which, you know, he was telling me that happens to him a lot because he just gets the energy in the room up. So it wasn't a bad thing. This is just showbiz, you know, like that's where the child in you's like, fuck that shit, it's whack. But then the man inside is like, you know what, that makes sense. They're here for Neo. We're just the warm-up acts, you know?
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun. I've done a lot of good shows, man. I had a lot of fun with Superfest. Fat Joe was on there. I'm a massive Fat Joe fan. And Joe's a massive fan of hip-hop. He would watch everyone's show every night. And I had this elevated DJ box, if you can imagine the main stage, and they had this elevated DJ box to the side. You had to walk up some steps, so sometimes the artists would come hang out with me and watch people. And I had this foot-operated CO2 cannons. So if I was doing something, I could stomp on it and would blow the smoke up, you know? And I remember once I didn't see, but Fat Joe had walked around the front and I nearly fucking blew him up. Because and at the very last second, I must have saw him out the corner of my eye and I was like, you know, and like Fat Joe's like, obviously he's, you know, heavy set dude, but he's fucking massive, dude. He's like 6 foot, 7 foot tall. Like he would have been like the Muppets. You would have just seen Nino around going, ah, into the crowd. So it was cool, man. I had a good laugh with them. I've been very blessed, man. I've had a good career and I've seen a lot of cool acts. I've seen artists throw dummy fits and, you know, get mad and throw tantrums. I've seen it all, bro. I've seen a lot of wild shit.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. Tell us a bit more about because those Superfest festivals are like the biggest urban festivals that have.
They were huge. They were saying it was the biggest urban festival in the world. I don't know if that's true or not, but it definitely had a lot of artists. And they were huge, man. In Perth and Sydney, Melbourne, they were getting, you know, 25, 30,000 people. And there would be like 200 of us on the road. Like we'd take up a whole plane. Shit would be nuts, you know. And thank God we used to fly Qantas because I'm like a Qantas Platinum flyer. Because that group check-in was a fucking nightmare, bro. It was like Lamington time at Long Bay Prison. Like it was no joke. I didn't want to be in that line, so I just duck off and just check in on my own.
Oh shit!
Because it'd be like 150 people arriving at once, all trying to check in, and everyone's tour manager had the job to get their artist in first. And because I was the DJ, like it was, you know, no one was letting me cut in. But no, it was cool. That was a lot of fun. And I think the last or the second last Superfest, they had the week off in Surfers Paradise, and those dudes just had like mansion parties every night of the week. You know, when Snoop was here, I'm sure he smoked Australia Drive weed. Like it was pretty serious. One of my boys was Snoop's tour manager, and he would, you know, ring us and be like, "Stop your bus," and he'd get out and Snoop's door would open and smoke would pile out, and he just would get out with a contact high and be like, "I can't do it. I'm gonna die." But no, it was funny, man. It was all pretty good, and it all ran. You know, logistically, the guys that put it on knew their shit, and it all happened, and it was a big deal, man. And even DJ wise, like it was a lot of work, and I used to go and talk to the DJ from every group because, you know, Fat Joe might come out and perform over a Dr. Dre beat or something. So I needed to know that, so I didn't actually play, I don't know, next episode right before they came out and fucked their whole shit up. So, and some of these groups have been out before on their own, like Naughty by Nature. I toured with them the very first time they came out in like 99. So I've met them 2, 3, 4 times. You know, I stay in touch with KG, and so we got to hang out and do a lot of cool shit, man. Like it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, man. How's it traveling with those dudes? Because we interviewed Tretch when they were down here last time, and then briefly met him at the show. Seemed like real cool.
Yeah, they're very down to earth, man. They've had a lot of success. I mean, some of those early 90s rap groups, they sold some serious albums, you know. And I think as you get older, if you're really cool and if you've really got money, you're secure.
Yeah. So
those guys sold a bunch of records. They own houses and property, and they're good. I think they really tour because they love doing it, and it probably gives them some spending money, you know. But they're super cool guys. I mean, Tretch is cool. He flips off the handle if he gets pissed at something. They had a scrap in Sydney. Something happened. I remember there was a story once where someone went to punch Tretch and he moved and got his tour manager. Like it was a lot of fun things going on, man. But yeah, Tretch is mad cool. I've never really bonded and hung out with Vinny too much, but he seems cool when we did chat. He was always very cool. And KG's the homie, man. Like when I went to New York, he came, picked me up, took me over to Jersey, took us to some basketball games, like took us to his house, to his studio. So he's a really, really nice guy, man, very down to earth. And you know, like they work with the Jacksons, you know, like they've done some
big shit,
heavy duty shit. And that's the thing, like we forget, but groups like them, Cypress Hill, they sold like 30 million albums or crazy numbers, you know, and they're just cool guys. I've met Cypress a couple of times. They're cool guys. Like this, cool. They love what they do. You can tell they are hip hop, you know.
One thing I wanted to get your take on was obviously DJing now in 2016 is different to 95, 2000, 2005. I remember, I kind of feel like back in the day, obviously when things were on vinyl, skills was an absolute must because not anybody could do it. and obviously you had to invest the time and the money to go to the record stores, buy the records, buy doubles, dig, all that sort of shit.
It's funny, man. Like, I agree with you, and then I disagree with you. And what I mean by that is, it's like, to guys like us, yes, But whenever I played at a club, if there were 4 DJs, there was always me and 1 or 2 other guys that were, I guess you'd say, hip hop DJs who did all that. Dug for records, bought doubles. I mean, I used to buy fucking 4 copies of shit because I wanted 2 brand new copies in case I used them for Blazin or a mixtape or something, because the records have that Q-burn sound and whatnot. But then there were always dudes that were just DJs. And what I mean by that is they were just a guy who loved to play music at parties. It isn't a bad thing, man. It's like I said, as I've gotten older, I'm a lot more mellow than what I used to be, because I used to be like that, fuck you, you're whack guy, I was him all day long. And it's funny, Samurai's always like, you can't be that guy anymore. You can't say to people, fuck you, you suck, because, it's 2016. But, it's like anything. It's like saying you go to a karate school and there's some guy that just does karate to keep himself fit and he wants to be able to move a little bit in case someone tries to mug him, But then you got another guy that's trying to train in the corner to be the world champion. So it just depends what they're about, My whole thing was, if they were just the happy dude that DJ'd the party and just was a very basic DJ and played the right records and rocked the party and wasn't trying to, I guess, be the big DJ or be the skills dude, because he wasn't, then that was cool. I was cool with that, If you were trying to talk shit like you were that dude but you couldn't back it up, well, then that was different and people would call you out. I guess it's like being a rapper. If you're just a cool rapper that everybody likes, for lack of a better expression, let's say someone like Talib Kweli, who's obviously a talented rapper, but he doesn't say fuck you and disses this guy, and do you know what I mean? But if you want to be somebody like 50 Cent that comes out and wants to be the hardest and do all this stuff, unless you can back it up, people call you out. Yeah. So with the DJ thing, it's the same, but it is different, I think now as well, people expect a little less from DJs. I'll say that, 10, 15 years ago, people expected more of a DJ, and even the more basic DJ had exemplary track selection and hence the selector title. Yeah. You could be a selector. You had the dope record collection. You had all the shit and you just seamlessly mixed, Nowadays with MP3s and whatnot, there are kids, maybe what's happening now is people are going out and DJing sooner than they would have usually, because even if you didn't have a lot of technical skills, but you were a selector, you might have needed to collect records for 2 or 3 years before you had enough stuff to play a party. When now you can get a laptop and the next day have all the music, technically, So, and the other thing as well is, man, I don't know whether the general public are that educated and know or care. There are other things that entertain them, like Facebook, So, if they go to a party, they just want to hear songs. They may not really care about the mixing, And it's like we're saying about the DMC, when I went in the DMC in 98, 99, I mean, let's go back a sec. Let's say Cash Money might have made the DMC dope, right? Yeah. Which was 88. So 10 years later, when I was doing it in 98, it was still kind of new and it was a novelty. And in Sydney, you'd get 1,000 people at the Metro Theatre for the New South Wales DMC, But let's say 10 years later in 2008, or in 2016, I mean, 20 years has almost passed. So the shit ain't new anymore. So you can't be mad for people not being that excited. You know what I'm trying to say? Just things change,
What do you think, because you notice how you've got your battle DJs and then you've got your club DJs, and a lot of the times, you've gone from battling into the club realm and you've done it in a pretty seamless.
Yeah, well, let me jump into that real quick. So I was always... I was a fan of hip hop first, right? So I had the records, you know what I mean? And then at first, I just wanted to learn how to beat mix. So there was a few years, when I was a kid and doing a few house parties where I was just a beat mix dude that had the records, you know what I mean? But because I loved hip hop and I'd hear guys like Scratch and see the videos, I wanted to learn how to do it. And I guess I went from being which I think is probably the best way to do it. You learn, you have the records, you beat mix, you can play a party. But then I got into the battling thing, do you know what I mean? But I never started out as a battle DJ, if that makes sense, So because I think I always did parties, that helped me do the club stuff because I was always doing that, I already had jobbing clubs before I did the DMC. There are dudes who like Samurai came out to the world as a battle DJ. You know what I mean? He was like Australian DMC champion, and he may not have even played at a club at that point. You know, he was a young dude, you know. And then that obviously leveraged him to get into clubs, and he was a beast and did his thing, you know. There are some dudes that just love turntablism and don't want to play parties, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I even say now there are dudes that are more into turntablism than hip-hop.
Yeah.
Right? That's my thing now, right? So I say to people like for me, DJ Revolution is one of my favorite DJs because with everything he does, you know, he'll scratch up a DMX vocal or a Lauryn Hill vocal, which a lot of turntablists wouldn't do. They'll just be using Qbert records, you know. Not a bad thing, it's just different. So I've always liked DJs that loved hip-hop. Jazzy Jeff, the Z-Trips, you know, guys like Scratch Bastard, the newer generation, and guys like Revolution, you know. But yeah, so for some of the battle DJs, if they've just been into turntablism, they may not dig for records. That may not be their thing. They may just have a bunch of battle records, which is cool. That's what they do, you know.
And that's their thing.
That's their thing, you know. Like for me, I've always loved hip hop music first, before DJing even, and before turntablism.
Yeah.
So even now, like when I do stuff at clubs, I'm not trying to prove myself as a turntablist when I play. I'm just trying to rock a party. And if I can do some of that stuff because I'm vibing to it, it's more I'm doing that for a vibe rather than trying to sort of flex skills. I mean, sometimes you might want to flex skills. Like if I've got to play with fucking Sanchez, like you have to fucking show him who the chief rocker is, you know? But, you know, it just depends what it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there has been a bit of a stigma sometimes that some battle DJs can't play. Which is true. They can't because they don't. It's not what they do. You know what I mean? And it's like a dude that plays at a club may not be a battle DJ because that's just not what he does. You know? So you got guys like Cash Money who do both, you know? And it's funny, like Cash Money's famous for doing the DMC, but Cash will tell you he's just a badass DJ. So when he does parties, that's kind of like what he did at the DMC, you know?
Yeah, I remember his DMC routine. It was like a full party rock. I remember dudes had whistles in the background and shit.
All kinds of shit, man. Yeah, off the chain, you know. And that's the thing, like a lot of the stuff that certain DJs do and the juggles and the scratch patterns, that's just sort of like part of DJing, you know. And Shorty Blitz from the UK once, I remember at an interview, he was saying as far as turntablists go, he felt there were very few in the world in terms of making music with turntables, you know, Mixmaster Mike, Rock Raider, rest in peace. Certain men like that were like pure bona fide turntablists, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are just dope technical DJs. Not a bad thing. It's just
it's what they do.
Like, you know, when Mike does his thing, he's not really trying to play records. He's trying to make something new out of that, you know?
Yeah, he's wild, man.
Definitely an animal. Definitely an animal.
The last 2-7. Oh, yeah.